And there was a lot of action over the weekend because of the debt ceiling. And there were reports going back and forth, that there was a compromise that had come together. What was in this compromise? The votes have not happened yet. They're going to be very interesting to watch. So I wanted to bring in Harry Hutchison, our director of policy. First, Harry, just the kind of the basics of what this deal. I mean, again, I feel for the Republicans to some extent. They only have the House. President Biden wouldn't even meet with them until they proved that they could raise the debt ceiling on their own, which they did. They surprised Democrats by extending the debt ceiling for a few weeks and being able to do that vote. So in a sense, that was a good move by them, and they coalesced together. But then now it's like, okay, what did you get in your compromise? Well, I can only say what can they truly expect to get when they don't control the Senate or the White House. But kind of where do you see things stand right now with the current negotiation of what has been presented to us as something Republicans should support?
Well, I think the agreement, to be fair, is simply a muddle, but it may indeed be the best that Kevin McCarthy could accomplish. So the deal, at least from what I've read, foresees minor reductions in defense spending, minor reductions with respect to the IRS, some caps on discretionary spending. But the real problem, I think, is that so much of the federal budget is already committed for the next 10 to 15 years because we have mandatory spending in the form of Medicare, Social Security, and other social programs. To be clear, the Democrats want more. But also, to be fair to Democrats, it's important to keep in mind that both Democrats and Republicans continue to enjoy spending other people's money. And so the real problem, which the debt ceiling, I think, highlights, is the fact that neither Republicans nor Democrats can restrain themselves when they are in power from spending. And so we have had deficit spending for the last 40 years or so with a few years of a balanced budget in between. And so the American people and the conservatives in Congress, they're really focused on reducing spending, but they face headwinds ahead. Senator Lindsey Graham, he has come out against the agreement, in part because the agreement makes a minor cut in defense spending, and there are few things that Lindsey Graham loves more than defense spending.
I would just like to know what exactly would happen should they not reach an agreement on the debt ceiling.
All right, so I think this is always the scary talking point, which is default. Harry, explain that to folks.
Default shutdown, all the things.
Well, it's a very good question. The real issue, at least in the short run, is if a debt ceiling agreement is not reached in a timely manner, then the United States government will have difficulty borrowing money on global markets. And I think the actual deadline, notwithstanding what Secretary of the Treasury Yellen says, is probably the middle of June. So many U.S. debts, they roll over or they become due. And then the United States has to go out and borrow additional funding. But the Treasury Department lacks the authority to borrow additional monies unless a debt ceiling agreement is indeed reached. And so I think that is the problem. But the fundamental problem is that we continue to spend more money than we have. And right now, the vote is... The key vote is Wednesday of this week. The agreement goes before the Rules Committee, and right now it's very touch and go as to whether or not they will agree to pass this vote on the debt ceiling on a preliminary basis.
Yeah, I mean, so it's going to be something we watch all week. It seems like to me the negotiations aren't completely done. I mean, there's the framework. But you've got senators saying, hey, I'm not voting for this. So if you got one senator saying that, and you get a couple of members of the House saying, I want this, there could be some changes before Wednesday.
I think that's correct because progressives don't like the deal, conservatives don't like the deal, individuals that support the Defense Department don't like the deal. And so the question becomes, will the agreement in principle fall apart?
I don't think it's just that people want to be told how to think, but we have a lot of people in the comments going, well, what's the way is the right way? And that's sort of one of the problems you have is that just to explain this, understand how it affects everyday Americans, it gets so in the weeds that it's a bit hard for people. So when they're asking these questions, like we just had a comment, what do you think is the best option to Jordan and to Harry? Asking them these questions, how do you answer that?
Yeah, I think that, again, you have to look at, like, what are your options? So I think here is you get the best deal you possibly can and you take it to the next election cycle. I don't think you know what I've seen in the past, shutting things down and us, whether or not it even has that big of an effect, long term, it doesn't usually, that if we default on this for 2 days or we're in default, does that have this huge effect? Not necessarily. But politically, Harry, it hasn't really worked for Republicans. It is backfired.
I think that is
every
correct.
time they do it, the Democrats use it in an ad to say they don't care about you. They're willing to put your Social Security checks and delay your Social Security checks and your Medicare and Medicaid checks. And so even if it's not true, it has not helped us. We need to get more Republicans and we can get a better deal.
I think that is correct. And in the short run, if you don't reach an agreement, interest rates will continue to rise, meaning it will be more difficult to purchase a house going forward. Yep. So I think it is important for the American people.
Yeah, I think this time around, when you look at all the actors, I think they would use it, not just a political tool, but if Republicans just said, no, we're not doing this, we're not moving forward, they would use it to do so many things that would affect you today. That it would not just, it was, again, rising interest rates. They would say, oh, this is our reason to raise them more, even more than we initially planned, which hurts a lot of folks out there. So I think I hope that explains it to you very easily, how these immediate consequences of not getting to a deal. So you don't have to be, I don't think you have to be praising every Republican for this deal, but I think you have to be a little realistic. There's times when you take a stand and there's times when taking a stand is going to hurt you. And
in this kind of system, politics is nuanced, and you have to be able to at least, you'd rather get 90% there or 2% there than 0% there.
Right. And understand that, you know what? You don't have control of the Senate. You don't have control of the White House. Yeah. At least you're getting something back, and you're not giving them an excuse. You're not creating campaign ads for them.